Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub, and welcome to the MAHA Revolution. Super Bowl 15 was more than a football game. With nearly 125 million viewers, it became the second most watched television event in American history. And on that stage, the most commercialized platform in modern culture, something extraordinary happened. Peter Arnell, the legendary brand visionary and creative director, alongside a champion creative team, redefined what Super Bowl advertising can be. Starring Mike Tyson and directed by acclaimed filmmaker Brett Ratner, the MAHA Real Food film shattered decades of advertising convention. Shot in a stark black and white, stripped of spectacle and excess, the film distilled its message to its purest form. This was not just another commercial, it was a national declaration. For decades, Super Bowl advertisements have glamorized junk, processed and ultra-processed food, hyper-produced messaging designed to seduce and manipulate. Arnell's film broke that pattern. Instead of seduction, it offered sincerity. Instead of excess, it offered restraint. Instead of manipulation, it offered permission. With NBC and the NFL airing what many described as a provocative and controversial message, the moment proved that even the most commercialized cultural stage in American history can carry meaning, substance, and public value. Working closely with MAHA leadership, Arnell and his team transformed a traditional advertising slot into something closer to a national public service announcement, without sacrificing artistry or emotional power. At the center of it all was Mike Tyson, not just a champion with 50 professional victories, but a man speaking openly about his battles with obesity, unhealthy eating, and the emotional consequences of toxic food environments. His message was very simple. Reclaim your health through real food. Eat real food. It takes a rare creative alliance, Tyson's raw honesty, and Ratner's disciplined direction to resist glossy production and deliver something vulnerable, something true. As Peter Arnell said, when you're given the largest platform in America, you have a responsibility. This wasn't just about spectacle, it was about clarity. Real food is not just nutrition, it's human. Brett Ratner put it this way, the breakthrough here was restraint. Mike didn't perform, he spoke. And that honesty is what made it really powerful. And as I said, this spot is a cultural inflection point. We chose courage over comfort, and the reaction proves this country is ready for truth. The timing was deliberate. On the heels of the government's new food pyramid guidelines, MAHA chose a voice that embodied both the problem and the solution. The voice was Mike Tyson, and the impact didn't end with the broadcast. Arnell personally photographed the national MAHA campaign imagery, extending the message into cities all across America. Through a major contribution from a terrific company called Firefly, Tyson's powerful black and white portraits now dominate taxi talks coast to coast, transforming skylines into moving declarations of national health advocacy. What began as a film has been transformed into a movement, a cultural reset, a redefinition of what Super Bowl advertising can stand for, and a declaration that real food and real truth belong at the center of the American conversation. This is just the beginning. It's the first knockout, coming just 1 year after Secretary Kennedy and President Trump's promise to make America healthy again. There's so much more to do, so many more battles to fight, to win, to reclaim public trust and public health, to make it easier and more affordable to be healthy. We have a great lineup today, including Gary Brecka, Rick Jaffe, Dr. Eric Berg, Deputy Secretary of HHS Jim O'Neill, Russell Brand, and Charles Eisenstein. But let's start with the great and legendary Mike Tyson. Tyson, who just struck the hardest blow in history against processed food by telling people one simple thing, eat real food. Welcome, Mike Tyson. We're going to first play just a quick commercial that everybody ought to see.
My sister's name was Denise. She died of obesity at 25. She had a heart attack. I was so fat and nasty. I would eat anything. I was like 345 pounds, a quart of ice cream every hour. I had so much self-hate when I was like that. I just wanted to kill myself. We're the most powerful country in the world, and we have the most obese, fudgy people. Something has to be done about processed food in this country.
So, Mike, I just want to say I really love that ad. You just knocked it out of the ballpark. But, Mike, so you fought some of the toughest opponents in the world. What made you decide that this fight, the fight against processed food, was worth stepping into the ring in this way?
Well, it was a personal fight with me, because I had members of my family that suffered from obesity. I had my sister. She left 2 kids, 2 little babies. And it devastated our life, obesity.
Yeah, couldn't be more true. So you've shared something deeply personal, when you told the story of your sister. How did her death shape the way you think, and not just about food, but about everything?
I was made for the job.
Definitely. So some critics say that that the boxing discipline, that the discipline for boxing determines everything. When you look back at your struggles with weight, do you think that, eating processed food is a discipline problem? Or do you think it's something that was, created to hook people, created to be like a drug that people just couldn't resist?
Ultra-processed food is a narcotic pretty much. Once they eat it, they can't put it down. People in the neighborhood, they come from prison, they become smart, and they start talking about processed food as, what do they call that stuff? Population control. Because it's going to kill you.
Yeah, and then, so part of it is that, and then you've also talked about people being misled, how much of this crisis comes down to personal choice, and some of it comes down to a food system that's just built to make money, to profit from people being sick.
Even for the most conscious people, they push the ultra-processed so much, you have to eat it.
Yeah. So, the bottom line is it's just not people's fault. And part of our job is to start to tell people the truth so that they can make better decisions than they made in the past, and try to get off this narcotic and try to start eating real
100%.
food. And so then the last question is, if someone listening feels overwhelmed, they're busy, they're stressed, they don't have much money, what do you think is a good first step that they can take to sort of reclaim their health? Like Bobby Kennedy says, to become CEO of their own body.
I find a mentor. You can have a mentor at any age. You can have a mentor at 50, but find a mentor. And your mentor could be younger than you, but he has the right lifestyle to teach.
Yeah, and that's something that really transformed your life, right?
Absolutely. My mentor changed everything in me. Where I was headed and where I'm at now, you couldn't even fathom the two.
Yeah, well, there's no question, you have struck the most powerful blow in recent history against these companies that really are trying to addict people, trying to feed them narcotics. And so it's a great thing, and we just want to keep on working with you.
I just know this. Ultra-processed food is big business, and we have to put them out of business.
That's the goal, or get them to transform their businesses into producing, real healthy food, so that we 100%. Can then eat that real food. Because they have the distribution system, so maybe they can be helpful. Maybe they can be part of solving the problem.
And we're doing the right thing, giving them information.
Thanks so much for coming on, Mike. You're a superstar. You're my hero.
It's been my pleasure.
Really, just grateful. Next up, we have Gary Brecka. He has been on many, many times. He's a visionary founder of The Ultimate Human. He's a human biologist, a biohacker, a longevity expert, travels around the world. As I always say, he's been to 16 countries in 18 days at one point. He's just teaching people all around the world to lead healthier lives filled with vitality. And he's one of the loudest MAHA voices and champions, and just doing incredible work, and we're grateful to have him on again. Welcome, Gary.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Tony. I'm actually in London right now. We head back to the States tomorrow. Big media roadshow over here. What's astounding to me is the impact that MAHA is having outside of the border of the United States and even outside of North America. The entire world is talking about it. It's really fascinating to me is, I stumbled upon an investment report. I'll give this to MAHA. You can share it with all of your members. It's an incredible capital markets research document, really meant to guide Wall Street investors, big family offices, and institutions towards the next big trends, investment trends. And so rather than using it as an investment document, what's really, I found really astounding was on the 38th page of this document, there's several pages that go into great detail about the impact that MAHA-related initiatives have had, that Bobby Kennedy's agenda has had, and that organizations like MAHA Action have directly had on consumer sentiment. We are witnessing the greatest shift in human interest in recorded history. And by human interest, if you were to consolidate these three terms, I say this all the time, longevity, wellness, and anti-aging, because people use these interchangeably. It's an interest in taking healthcare choices into their own hands. It's not an interest in fixing the system. It's an interest in how do I stay out of the system. And that's not to lay any shade on the system, but it is a level of interest now. And if you look at the data in here, it eclipses sports, entertainment, travel, leisure, culinary, all of the major interests, areas of human interest globally. And what's fascinating is that this is being driven by Gen Z. I found this really fascinating. I thought this is sort of an older age movement, people my age in their 50s that care about their health, that have kids, that are aware of what's going on. No, this is actually being driven by the youngest generation, and it spans political parties. It's not left or right. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's not progressive or liberal or conservative. This is a level of human interest that begins around age 17 and goes all the way to age 75. And the document specifically refers to the initiatives that Bobby Kennedy and Health and Human Services and NIH and the Stork program for not breast milk, but for infant formula, and how it is creating groundswell of opportunity in the capital markets to actually get in front of this interest and service this massive, voluminous shift in human interest, which is translating now into human behavior. The largest dollars being spent, discretionary dollars, are now being spent on disease prevention. People are conscious of things like whole food diet, turning their attention towards their sleep, and mobility becoming non-negotiable. So people are moving, eating better, and focusing on their sleep in mass. And they're gravitating towards devices and culture and community with people that have a shared vision. So things like social wellness are exploding. Things like run clubs are at all-time highs in multiple countries around the world. And like I said, I'll send this to you, Tony. Maybe we can make a link available on MAHA. Obviously, if you're in the space and wanted to use it to guide your business, so be it. But what an amazing time in history when the greatest shift in human interest and human behavior is around healthy living, healthy lifestyle, and life extension. I think it's just phenomenal. And it highlighted that it wasn't the exotics, right? It wasn't like stem cells, exosomes, NAD, IV drips. This was around basic behavior related to wellness and longevity. So this message is landing. It is landing in mass. It is shifting consumer behavior, how they use their dollars. That will eventually shift corporate behavior. And so we don't have to go out and necessarily face a lot of these corporate bullies. What we can do is we can shift the consumer sentiment and behavior, and their dollars will determine their behavior. And so I just wanted to highlight that and make it available to everybody. I thought it was a really bright light in some of the research I was doing this week. So I'm usually studying, delayed onset muscle soreness or something really boring. But I thought this was fascinating.
Yeah, that's really great stuff, because it is clear that health is really big business. And, like I've said many times before, we are for business. We want people to make a lot of money, but we want them to make it by doing things that help people, that improve people's health, that make people lead, healthier, longer lives. And, Dr. Oz said when he was on last week that every year we can add to the longevity of the entire population of the country, adds $3 trillion each year to the economy. So that's a lot of money. That's a lot of prosperity that we can get. And that's been diverted to companies that have been lying to the public and producing products that are unhealthy and unscientific and are creating chronic disease. So if we just redirect all of that money, everybody, virtually, the entire country can make more money and lead healthier and happier lives. So there's a really big upside here. So MAHA, it's great to see that it's showing up in, documents that are sent out to investors at very high levels. Next, we have Russell Brand. And Russell is a superstar. He has a real spiritual wisdom to him and is a legendary health freedom movement advocate. He's evolved from a comedian to a consciousness explorer and, uses his, multi-million viewer platform to question mainstream media. Great to have you on once again, Russell Brand.
I love you. Thanks for that lovely intro. Can we kill the audio in the room? We're still doing our show, is the truth. We're still doing our show, Tony. But thank you for having me on. Look, there's Jake. We're doing our show. There's our show. We're talking about Michael Jackson. We've talked a lot about the MAHA Super Bowl ad. Congratulations on that. And I know I have the great honor of being an approximate follower of the great Mike Tyson. And I was just reflecting on, I've met Mike. I've had the privilege of meeting him a couple of times. And one of the times when I met him, I was younger and much stupider, if you can conceive of such a state. And I very naively provoked Mike Tyson. Like, why would someone do that? I mean, why would you? I'm just trying to understand myself and how I was then. Is what was it that made me think it would be a good idea to provoke Mike Tyson? Who in their right mind provokes Mike Tyson? Hello, everyone on Rumble. I'm just doing this MAHA call. Remember that I'm a keen supporter of the MAHA movement. I love Secretary Kennedy. I actually love him. And many of his affiliates and associates like Dr. Oz and Kelly and Casey Means and people that are directly affiliated with the movement or people that are tangentially affiliated with the movement, I count among my firm and dear friends. Tony Lyons, who runs the MAHA movement, brilliant publisher, I consider to be a very great man. The function of MAHA couldn't be simpler. Make America healthy again. And as you probably saw in the excellent Super Bowl advert, eating real food, or even better in monosyllable, the triumvirate of eat real food is the new MAHA mantra, delivered beautifully by Mike Tyson. I saw Secretary Kennedy himself directly report that Mike Tyson came up with that spontaneously and organically. And that hardly surprises me because no one can achieve the levels of excellence that Mike Tyson achieved as an athlete without a level of ingenuity. And I've always somewhat balked at the idea that brilliant sports people are idiots. And, I reckon there's a lot of tropes packed into that because to be able to calculate in the manner that Mike Tyson did in his prime is an indication of a supreme functioning and embodied intelligence. Mike Tyson, too, by my reckoning, was treated pretty appallingly by the culture and certainly must be a wiser, braver and bolder man. I'm sorry, now I'm back on both of these things. I'm sorry that I didn't get to see Mike Tyson's contribution to this call because what I feel like you're dealing with Mike Tyson is a man who's lived a rich, rich life, a man who knows what it's like to be the heavyweight champion of the world, a man who knows what it's like to be in jail, a man who knows what it's like to grow up poor. This is a person who is not on the periphery and the sidelines and margins of life, but a man who's in the thick, hard battlefield of life, which is frankly where we all belong now. I think the cozy days are over, to quote your great Jim Morrison. The ballroom days are over, baby. This is not the leisure time anymore. Might be a time for fun and pleasure and glory, but isn't it fascinating to know that even something as, let's face it, innocuous as the Super Bowl, meaning that sport is by its nature innocuous, sanitized one. I'm not saying sport isn't brilliant. I'm a fan of football, in particular particular West Ham United football team come on new irons. And I can see the greatness of the three primary American sports: football, basketball, baseball. I see the pageantry, I see the glory, I see the eminent simplicity of life reduced to a set of rules and a set of balls. And no one had a set of balls like Mike Tyson. Anyway, I chose to provoke Mike in an interview by asking him to his face, foolishly, what was it like, Mike? How come you managed to blow that $300 million fortune? And I didn't register, idiot that I was, the subtle changes in expression that Mike Tyson would have been making available if I'd only had the intelligence to observe them. How did you get from 300 million to 250 million to 200 million to 150 to 100 million to one accountant's going, Mike, it's only 10 million now. Mike, it's only 5 now. Mike. And you were like, I'm going to buy another white tiger. I was like astonished. I was like Mike Tyson brilliantly and said to me, you know, I could just throw you out this fucking window right now. And I sort of went, yes, I know that you could, Mike. I had to make a really sort of radical adjustment in my attitude. It's wonderful that Mike Tyson is using his definite and evident brilliance and experience to carry a plain and simple message that he's uniquely qualified to carry. Eat real food. And isn't it extraordinary that in these days amounts to a political statement? Eat real food is a political statement, because in saying eat real food, you're saying, don't eat the food provided by big agriculture. Don't eat the food provided by craft. Don't eat the insidious poisons that they're inserting into the diets of your actual children. And we are all outraged when there's a school shooting, because it's dramatic and it's appalling and it's disgusting, whoever does it, whether it's a man, a woman, or a person outside of those categories. What we should be equally appalled by is children going to school and taking Coca-Cola from machines. Because whilst it might not radically and drastically murder them and drop them dead on the spot over time, are more children and people in general dying of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and other diet-related illnesses, and there'll be geniuses on this call who will tell you how many deaths in total are related to preventable diseases caused by diet. Is that not a problem of significant and sufficient merit to warrant intervention? So Mike Tyson, a great man, a great hero who's overcome the odds in and out of the ring. I'm sorry to have missed him. I'll check it. If you can rewind such things, I'll watch it at a later date. Tony, thanks for having me on the show. I hope the commercial was a success. I hope your endeavor is a success. I love you. I love all of you. Peace.
Thanks so much, Russell. You know, provoking Mike Tyson doesn't seem much better than eating processed food. It's not going to go well for you.
Yeah,
it's going to knock you out.
It will knock you out.
It's going to leave you with no energy, with no personal power, with nothing. So
I'm not going to do either ever again. I'm not going to provoke Mike Tyson or eat processed foods. That's my vow.
Next up, we have Rick Jaffe. Rick has been a healthcare and health freedom litigator for, I think, more than 40 years, taking on medical boards, federal agencies, institutional orthodoxy since his first unconventional treatment case in 1985. He joins us to talk about the latest lawsuit filed by Children's Health Defense against the American Academy of Pediatrics. Thanks so much, Rick, and great to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me on, Tony. I really appreciate it. And that's quite some people to follow. So I kind of feel like little Debbie Downer. We're talking about all these great things about food and all these wonderful things and all. And I'm here to talk about lawsuits. So that being said, that's why I'm here. So that's what I'm going to do. The short of it is that about 3 weeks ago, we filed a lawsuit against the American Academy of Pediatrics for racketeering, which is an unusual thing to do, but not unprecedented. It's really based on a series of lawsuits filed by the U.S. government and some insurance companies against the tobacco industry 25 years ago for racketeering, and those cases were a success. And those cases were predicated or against the tobacco industry, including their scientific foundations, for basically promoting a false sense of uncertainty about the connection between smoking and cancer. The difference is we allege in the complaint that the AAP and its enterprise associates created a false sense of certainty regarding the safety of the combined vaccine schedule because, as some of you may know, but I didn't know until I started looking into this, the vaccine schedule itself, the 18 diseases, the 72 administrations of doses have never been safety tested as a schedule. I mean, that's probably unheard of in all medical science, where you give multiple dozens of interventions without testing the combined effect. So this is not my opinion. This is a fact. It was established by the Institute of Medicine in 2002 and again in 2013. And what they asked the CDC to do, and when I talk about the CDC, I'm not talking about this administration because they're great. All right. What they asked the CDC to do is take this giant filing cabinet we have called the Vaccine Safety Database and maybe VAERS and analyze the data and answer a simple question. Do vaccines create a net benefit or a net harm? 25, 30 years later, we still do not have that answer. Instead, what we have is information propagated by the AAP that children could have 10,000 antigens at a time and still respond to vaccines. They answered an immunological question about how many antigens a child could process, where parents wanted to know a toxicological question, whether it was safe or not to administer all these vaccines at the same time. So that's the fundamental premise of the lawsuit. But let me circle back, because I think what's important for you MAHA people to know is how we got here with Secretary Kennedy. And that has to do with a couple different lawsuits we filed. The first one, which it was back in April, where we challenged the CDC and asked that the COVID shot for kids be moved from recommended to shared decision-making. A month later, Secretary Kennedy announced that was going to happen, only he moved the vaccine just off the schedule and for pregnant women. A month after that, or 2 months after that, the AAP filed a lawsuit against Kennedy trying to move that back. Then the next thing we did, and by the way, CHD has funded almost all of these cases. Next thing we did, we filed a lawsuit to move all the vaccines from recommended to childhood to shared decision making. And, that lawsuit is still pending. Maybe we went a bridge too far, and maybe the CDC wasn't ready to do that. And then the AAP filed amended their complaint to challenge that as well. And then, of course, the Hep B vaccine was moved to shared decision making. And of course, in January, I believe Commissioner O'Neill moved 5 more. And as a result, the AAP filed another motion to amend, and now is moving for a preliminary injunction. So, and that really is the heart of what I have to talk about, which is that on Friday, there's going to be a hearing on a motion for a preliminary injunction, whereby the AAP is trying to move the CD schedules back to 18, and they're trying to stop the ACIP meeting from happening. That's a big thing. That could kneecap, that could just have all kinds of adverse consequences. And that's the goal. We basically have this vaccine mafia that's attempting to move back to 50 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago in terms of vaccines. So I would encourage all you people, all the people listening, to talk about this hearing that's going to happen. And I would have one point to make. I'm a litigator. I do motions for preliminary injunctions all the time. The irony is what the CDC has done is move from 18 recommended to 11 recommended vaccines. The AAP position is that 11 is dangerous. All kinds of harm is going to befall children. People are going to kids are going to die in droves because there are only 11 recommended vaccines. The point I want to make is in Massachusetts, where this lawsuit that the AAP has filed, they only require 9 shots or 9 immunizations for young kids in school and 10 for older kids in school. 1 less than the CDC has recommended. The AAP is not going after Massachusetts for causing harm to kids. And I think, in my view, as a litigator, that fact alone means they shouldn't be able to establish the critical element in a lawsuit that they have, which is irreparable injury. And I hope that somehow the judge takes a look at this and realizes that the very state that he sits in, and maybe where his kids are going to, they only require 10 shots, 1 less than what the CDC has now moved to. And that's really the bottom line.
Thanks so much, Rick. Yeah, and just so all of our viewers know, we want to have all perspectives on this show, and we want to have all different stakeholders come on and tell us what they think, tell us what they're doing, and we all have different roles. Your role is an important role, and lawsuits can be information that companies can take into account when they make decisions. And so, one of the problems with liability shields is that, if it's with vaccines or pesticides or food or with anything, is that it doesn't give the companies the information that they should be getting. So they should be looking to find ways to innovate. And we, as the MAHA movement and the government and activists and, all of us ought to be looking for ways to progress, to create better, safer, more sustainable products that, will have fewer side effects and lead to less chronic disease. So thanks so much, Rick, for coming on.
Amen, brother. Thanks for having me.
Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg. He's known as the Knowledge Doc, but he comes on this show, almost each week. He's just been an incredible friend to the MAHA movement, doing just phenomenal work. And, he's earned the Knowledge Doc title by being a globally recognized health educator. He's got something like 44 or 45 million followers all around the world. And for 3 decades, he's been helping people understand in the simplest possible ways how the body works, how they can do a better job. Once again, as Bobby Kennedy says, being a CEO of their own body and, their own health to create better health outcomes. So thanks so much for coming on again.
Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it. I want to share some insights on just the word MAHA, because the opposition to MAHA, they always have a problem with this one word, again, making America healthy again, because they associate that with going backwards. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because it's actually ridiculous. Like we're rejecting scientific institutions or rejecting science. They'll say natural health is pseudoscience, or MAHA wants us to go back to the dark ages, right? Well, there is absolutely something right about that. We do want to go back, but we want to go not to a time before science. We want to go back to a time before science was captured. That's exactly what was happening. It's been hijacked at many different levels in HHS and all over the place. So we want to go back to a time before healthcare got inverted, flipped. And you saw it with the food pyramid. It should have been the other way for a very long time, but we finally inverted everything. So if we just take a look at even the scoreboard of the current system, if you look at the leading cause of death in the United States, what crept up to number 3 is not an infection or a bug or something like that. It was something called iatrogenic disease. And for those of you that are not sure what that means, it's basically medically induced harm. Our current healthcare system became the 3rd leading cause of death. So, when we say we're undoing decades of science, is that the science you're talking about? Or what about the science that costs $4 trillion a year, yet delivers the sickest population in the developed world? So we rank, the worst in chronic disease: obesity, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, which Hashimoto's is actually number one. That's the thyroid problem. Mental health, we're on the bottom of the barrel. So, just looking at back when HHS was started, the architecture of the original Department of Health and Human Services, the original intention was a service organization. It was there to protect improved health and the well-being of American people. But now it's like a corporate boardroom. It's like a revolving door with the FDA. There's no transparency either. You can't know the conflicts of interest. So this is what RFK is stripping away. You can't really have a healthcare system with every agency so far to the left of any ethical anything. That has to be addressed. And that's why I'm so happy that RFK is like an attorney. He can go in there and clean things up. But even out of the billions of dollars in research, just the tiniest fraction, like 1.9% of that goes to root causes, which are lifestyle factors. Where does the other 98% go? It goes to managing symptoms, drugs, doing research on drugs. So when we're saying making America healthy again, we're talking about when food was actually food, not industrial cardboard, when the agencies serve the people, not the shareholders, and going back to a model where health could focus on not the management of symptoms, but actually on creating health. So we're not undoing progress. We're undoing the corruption that hijacked the progress. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks so much, Eric. And it's a great point that for the last generation, it seems like science has been captured. It's been kind of hijacked, and it's in many areas just stood still. And it stood still because there was a lot of money in just doing things the same way, and there were a lot of protections in place for companies to continue doing things the wrong way, the unscientific way, the less modern way. So it's really the system that's been in place that is backward and not forward thinking, forward looking. So, we want cutting edge therapies, treatments, drugs, ways of farming, ways of looking at how to protect and how to promote health. And, that I think is what is sometimes hard to see because there's so much money put into attacking us and protecting the status quo. And as you said, it's a status quo that has cost us trillions and trillions of dollars and given us very, very little. So, like we were able to flip the food pyramid, maybe the next thing we can do is flip the budget so that rather than 2% going towards prevention, maybe 98% can go towards prevention and 2% can go towards treating illness. So that would be a great outcome. So maybe that's the next battle for Mike Tyson to help us fight.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on, Eric.
Sure.
Next up, we have Jim O'Neill. He is Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services and Acting Director of the CDC. He's been, played a really big role and been instrumental in many of the really big MAHA wins over the past year. And, he's been a great friend to the MAHA movement and is doing just a terrific job. And we're happy to have him on again. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you so much for having me back. And great to see you this morning. So all of us are constantly thinking about chronic disease, how much suffering it's caused, how much disability it's caused, how much money it costs individuals and hospitals and taxpayers to pay for. There's one part of America that's been especially hard hit by chronic disease for the past few decades, and that's Indian country. That's tribal areas of America. They've suffered particularly acutely from a lot of chronic disease, have a lot of poor nutrition in many cases. And a major division of HHS, the Indian Health Service, which is finally MAHA under Secretary Kennedy's leadership, he recruited a wonderful advisor from the Klamath tribe in the Pacific Northwest, Mark Cruz, who advises Secretary Kennedy and me directly. I meet with Mark 3 times a week, and we are really bringing MAHA reforms to Indian country across America. So tomorrow, a bunch of sovereign tribes will be convening here in the Humphrey Building to meet with Secretary Kennedy and a lot of other leaders and talk about improving chronic health, improving overall health in Indian country, and we're making some great advances. One that we announced just on Monday, that Mark announced, is the Indian Health Service is finally going to end the use of mercury-containing dental amalgams starting next year. So as most of you know, and as FDA has recommended, it's better not to have mercury in your mouth. And the Indian Health Service is going to eliminate that. And we're all very excited about that. That's a very evidence-based MAHA approach. Secondly, last week, the president announced a new effective way of controlling prices for prescription drugs. You've heard a lot of news about a lot of great drug pricing deals that the president and Dr. Oz have negotiated over the past few months. There is now finally a single website that people can turn to browse for medications and get really good discounts, very affordable medications. Insulin, for example, is going to be up to 65% off on TrumpRx. Our CTO, Zach, was one of the lead designers on TrumpRx. We're so happy that it's available now for all Americans to turn to. It was great to see Tony this morning at the Humphrey Building, along with Mike Tyson, at a great MAHA rally about nutrition and the dietary guidelines. I hope you all saw Mike's Super Bowl commercial. It was great to catch up with him about that. We're so excited that we're continuing to spread the word, and all of you, everyone on this call, can help spread the word about the dietary guidelines and make sure people understand them and remember them. We're also working to take the nutrition message into medical care. So, doctors are pretty good at treating when you're sick. They're not as good as they could be at keeping people healthy. And so Secretary Kennedy and I have been talking to medical schools about including required nutrition class in the first year of medical school. We're making great progress on that. We expect to have some great announcements coming up this spring, because we have lots of great medical technology to cure you if you're sick. It's better if you stay healthy. And doctors are the people that give customized advice to patients, and they need to understand that. And finally, a lot of us have friends who work in technology. We're really trying to recruit the best tech talent to work at HHS. If you know data scientists, AI engineers, people that like fighting fraud using technology, please send them to us. We're hiring. We really want to have the best talent working here on MAHA issues at HHS. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jim. And that's, it's a great point that it's not anti-dentist to want to get, mercury out of dental products. It's not anti-food to want to get chemicals out of food. It's not anti-drug to want to have, pure drugs. All of these kinds of things. The companies that produce them in the past have wanted to reframe arguments so that it looked like you were somehow a conspiracy theorist, or you hated their product, or some ulterior motive. But it's just always going to be good to look at what's in any product, and see if we can do a better job. And that's what science really is. It's always looking at every product and saying, can we do better? Can we produce something that's healthier, that's going to increase longevity, that's going to decrease chronic disease? So I'm so grateful for the work that you've been doing and for all the triumphs. And thanks for coming on again.
Thank you. I agree with everything you said, Tony. Very well done. Thanks for your leadership.
Thank you. Next up, we have the very wise Charles Eisenstein. He's an author, a speaker, a philosopher. He's known for his books about economics and cultural transformations, including Sacred Economics and the Coronation. Thanks for coming on again, Charles, and can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Hey, Tony. Yeah, well, I was asked to comment on the Mike Tyson ad, and I found it very moving. And the part I want to point to is where he talks about self-hatred and cites that as the reason why he was eating a quart of ice cream every hour, which is a very different for one thing, it speaks to what Eric was talking about tracing things to their root and not just fighting the symptoms. And the operative word here is fight, because when Mr. Tyson was able to heal the self-hatred, then he didn't need to medicate himself with a quart of ice cream every hour. It wasn't actually a fight that he won, an imposition of control over something unruly, an exercise of discipline. That's not what it was. It was a journey of healing. And I think that when we get down to that level, we also have potentially a pathway toward healing on other levels, not only our own individual physical health, but also the health of our systems, the health of our society. Because really, the deepest problem in our society, what has paralyzed us, is our divisions. And that is, during the Kennedy campaign that I was a part of, that was, the campaign wasn't about health. I mean, that was one of the themes, chronic disease. It was a big theme. But that wasn't what brought us to levels of 24% in the polls at one point. It was heal the divide. And I think that in our current time, and I could reference the Epstein files, which are kind of obliterating a lot of our political identities, just because it is coming from so far outside of what many people had accepted as real, these political identities that people are so invested in kind of don't make sense in that context. So this coming apart of the legitimacy of institutions is a tremendous opportunity for us to focus on what can unify us. This coming apart actually, I won't say when it started, but certainly the COVID pandemic was a major milestone that made because before that, aside from a small minority of activists and people who are aware of, for example, the deficiencies of the medical institutions, the dangers of the vaccine schedule, and all those things, most people were just pretty much oblivious to that and just accepted on faith that the credentialed experts and the elite institutions were sound. Well, COVID began to unravel that faith in institutional legitimacy. Even people who professed to believe the CDC, by the time the CDC got around to recommending the 7th, the 8th, and 9th booster, people might have been, oh, yes, I trust the CDC, but did they actually get that booster? On some level, it registered that it wasn't working, that the vaccine didn't stop transmission, and so on and so forth. And so the faith in our institutions eroded. And that is now accelerating at our present moment, which when people start to question one source of legitimacy and authority, they start to question all of them. So I would just say that whatever the successes that we've experienced, thanks to Secretary Kennedy's leadership and to the ongoing activism of MAHA, we're just getting started. And the level of change that is ahead of us will be profound. Yeah. So thank you, Tony, for having me on again.
Thanks so much. And it's it's really true that so much of what Bobby Kennedy wanted to do was to heal the divide and create some kind of unity that would just lead to better lives for all people in the country. And he talked so many times about how there were no Democratic or Republican children, that they're just children. and that we have to do things and have policies that help all children. And then you mentioned the the COVID time, and I was thinking of this poem that I'm sure you've heard. Things fall apart. This is just a piece of it. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And then it says, surely some revelation is at hand. And maybe that's what's happened to some extent. Maybe that's the moment that so many people woke up and were willing to just look at things differently after some of the most incredible brainwashing and propaganda and lies that really just captured so many millions of people's brains. And so hopefully that's what can happen now, that we can be open to just incredible progress. And I've seen lots of that this year, and I'm hoping to see much more in the next 3 years. So any last words that you'd like to give us, or should we move on?
No, I think you put it very well, Tony. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. Next up, we have Armstrong Williams. He writes a nationally syndicated conservative newspaper column. He hosts a nationally syndicated TV program, The Armstrong Williams Show. But he's done so many great things, and he's been such a good friend to both the MAHA movement and to me personally that I don't even really know where to start. So he's just a great man. I'm grateful to know him and happy to have him on our show. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, Tony. So listen, I'm going to be very simple and very brief. A healthy nation requires more than hospitals and gyms. It requires truth, accountability, trust, and shared facts. This is where the media comes in. It really has a role for moral clarity and accountability. And so the press does not make America healthy by cheerleading power. It does so by examining it. When journalists expose corruption, waste, or abuse, they strengthen public institutions. We all understand that. And when they verify claims and they challenge misinformation and insist on evidence, what they do is that they protect citizens from manipulation, and transparency is a form of public health for a democracy. And so as a broadcast owner and as an owner of the Baltimore Sun, we take it very serious, particularly with making America healthy again and the role that the media can play in this. The media also, we forget, shape civic nutrition. Just as a steady diet of junk food weakens the body, a steady diet of, let's say, outrage, distortion, and clique-driven sensationalism also weakens public discourse just as well. And so responsible journalism, which is what prioritizes us and the facts, just the facts and the truth, grounded in facts and context, nourishes critical thinking. It allows citizens to make informed decisions about policies that affect their families, whether it's gluten-free diets, whether it's the different kinds of things that the Secretary of HHS advocate in making America healthy again. Their finances and their freedoms are involved in this because wealth is more than just about money. It's about being healthy. It's about getting the best advice, the best results, and not being used as some human guinea pig when you go to these doctors and these different clinics. And so there is also a unifying role. In a nation as large and as diverse as ours, the media provides a shared space of awareness. When done well, it helps Americans understand one another across race, religion, and political differences. It reminds us that while we may disagree, and oftentimes we do, we are still participants in the same civic project. And so therefore, at its best, the media is neither an arm of government or an instrument of ideology. It is a referee calling fouls, enforcing rules of evidence, and ensuring that the game is played in the open, not hidden, where people make money at the expense of your health. A healthy democracy depends on institutions willing to tell uncomfortable truths. And when those truths cuts against partisan interests, it's when all of us benefit. And so when the media loses credibility, public trust erodes. And when trust erodes, institutions weakens. But when journalism is disciplined, fair, and courageous, it strengthens the moral and civic immune system of the nation. And last but not least, a healthy America requires informed citizens. And informed citizens require a media culture committed to truth and not tribalism, substance over spectacle, and accountability over access. Thank you.
I thought that Armstrong made some really great points there, and that that I don't think we make progress by attacking people. I don't think we make progress by taking part in this sort of bifurcated society, that we need to find ways to work together to accomplish really great things. And that this should be a time, not to, there's an old quote that I really like saying that, we can destroy ourselves with cynicism and disillusionment just as effectively as with bombs. And so I think that we need to celebrate all the incredible things that are happening and the team that President Trump has put into place. And these are people who are certainly not trying to make more money, not trying to be more famous or become more powerful, but these are people dedicated to improving the health outcomes of every American. And this is an opportunity. This is a once in a generation opportunity. And I think we should really pursue that with the most optimistic, feelings and ideas and good nature, goodwill as we possibly can. So anyway, thank you for joining us for another great episode of the MAHA Media Hub and for tuning in this week. And as always, thank you to all of our speakers for their insights, their dedication, their contributions to the MAHA movement. We at the MAHA movement have many powerful tools at our fingertips. We have the MAHA report on Substack that now has more than 154,000 subscribers. It's one of the most read series on Substack now. And then we have our incredible MAHA Institute roundtables. We have the yearly historic MAHA Summit that just had some of the greatest speakers that I've ever seen at a big convention. And we have the legislative tracker, which is on our website. We have MAHA films, MAHA books. We have parties. We have big events all around the country. We have a mailing list of 2 million MAHA warriors. So let's all work together and let's galvanize our power and use this power to do just incredible things, to fight important battles and to have just epic victories this year. That's what I really want. And, with the hundreds of thousands of influencers who we have and their hundreds of millions of followers, we're going to harness every bit of that to work with every cabinet member who wants to work with us, every branch of government to support and be a powerful resource for the Trump administration going into the midterms, because Bobby Kennedy and his team, his incredible team, they have done an incredible job, but the battle is just starting, and we need to make sure that they have the opportunity to complete the job. So we overwhelmingly want the administration to continue to fight to make America healthy, and we want to be partners in that battle. So you're going to get an email follow-up to this call that's going to have action steps, clips from this week. And so please share our content. Please help us grow this increasingly powerful movement. Go to our website, do as much as you are able to do. And we're grateful that you've watched this, grateful that you're taking part in these battles with us, and look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday, every week, 4 to 5 p.m. Hope you have a great weekend. And thanks again for coming to the show.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.